All right, good morning, everyone. It's been a minute. I haven't done one of these it's been several months. We've made it through Christmas. All of us survived. And I'm due. So this morning I'm bringing in someone I respect greatly. He's the current captain on B shift for the city of St. Augustine. His name is Captain Brandon Seymour. I have been pseudo a part of your journey, if you will, just as much as you have mine, Brandon. I recall that when I got hired, I was assigned to 14C, and you were on C shift in the city.
Yep.
And I think that you were studying to be an engineer then. If not, it was right around the corner.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Because Chief Bassetti was on the street. I want to say he was either an engineer or a lieutenant maybe then. It was... those were some times. That was 2010.
Yep. April
of 2010.
Yep.
So do us all a favor, and I know you. I love you as one of my boys. You've been, watching how you operate in the city has been a big part of my journey. So I feel like I wouldn't be doing you any justice by not bringing you here and sharing some of the stuff that you have to offer. And I don't know. Tell me and the universe that's living out there, that's listening out there. Give us a little bit of a sense of, like your background or where you're from. I'll do the same because I don't know if we've ever actually had this conversation.
Yeah, no, absolutely. First and foremost, I mean, I gotta thank you. Like, this is extremely humbling for me, and I believe in what you're doing here. I appreciate it, and so many of us do on the city side.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, I mean, these conversations that you're having is 100% going to take us to that next level in this region as a jurisdiction and as agencies. And we love what you're doing. I love what you're doing, and the fact that you'd ask for me to come on here and share some thoughts means a heck of a lot to me. So I really appreciate that.
Well, thank you. This is one of those things where, I'm not even sure if I'm the one who should be doing this, but
you are.
It no one was. It wasn't really getting done, and I've earned a reputation of the person who's willing to fight just about every fight. So that's where this is kind of born out of my tenacity / stubbornness.
Hey, we love you.
Love it.
We love you. So for those that don't know me, third generation fireman. This would be, I'm working on my 19th year, got 18 years on the job, between two departments. Came on 2006 with the city of Flagler Beach. Had 3 great years there. Small single engine house. They've grown quite a bit since I've left. They've done some great things station? Down there. City of Flagler Beach has one station, and they auto-aid with Flagler County and Palm Coast at the time, Bunnell. Yeah, so they've got a couple agencies down there. But they've had some great things happening down there since I've left. Those folks have really turned that place and taken it to the next level. So, but I had great 3 years there. I was a volunteer through high school there. The Volunteer Association there took me in as a kid, really, and helped me with my education. I paid back my time, but they supported me financially for EMT and through fire school, and really put me in the right place for when as soon as a position came open for the career side, that I jumped on it, and had 3 great years there on the career side. Just wanted something a little bit busier, a little bit bigger. My then girlfriend, now wife, of going on 11 years, but we've been together for close to 20 years. She was a tour guide here for the city of St. Augustine.
Is that right?
Yeah. So
took you on the tour now.
Yeah, 100%. So she introduced me to the city of St. Augustine, and I was a Flagler boy up until that point, and would venture up here every now and then. But obviously, when she was in college, she was in Flagler College, and I started spending, of course, all my time up here. When I wasn't working, I was up here, right? And so she had said, why don't you apply for the city? Why don't you apply for the city? I was like, oh, okay. So I took the Tri-County test, and then I applied for the city in 2009. And I actually applied 3 times. And my Tri-County was getting ready to expire. Like, I got a call in August, and my Tri-County was going to expire like the end of, I want to say September or early October, and I wasn't going to do it again. I was like, all right, well, if it's not happening, it's not happening.
Right.
And I got a phone call from the administrative coordinator, and she said, hey, City St. Augustine, Jolinda Brown. She said, hey, I want to get you up here for an interview. And I was like, man, this is awesome. So I came up, interviewed a couple times, and they offered me the job, and I haven't looked back since. And, I've had nothing but great experiences here. And I came on, I was hired to C shift, and I spent several years there on C shift. Was promoted to engineer in 2000, I want to say 13, somewhere in there, and moved to B shift, and I did 3 or 4 years there, and then I was promoted to lieutenant in 2016, moved back to C shift, and did almost 8 years as a lieutenant. Had a phenomenal time, worked with great people both on the city and the county side, really developed me for who I am today. And then most recently was promoted to captain here in November. And between that and teaching at First Coast Technical College, that keeps me pretty busy. So but my wife has continued her time with the city too. We're very engaged here.
So she works for the city too?
She works for the city now.
What department she works for?
She's the historic preservation planner.
Is that right?
If you can imagine that.
Oh yeah.
Right. So so me running around doing building tours and quasi history tours. And
you ever run into her in a tour?
Yeah. So I'm probably stealing a lot of her stories from her all the time, but it's awesome. We have a lot of great conversations about what's happening in town, and she kind of helps me keep a finger on the pulse on things. And when something pops up on her end, she'll say, hey, what's going on with this building? And I'll be like, oh, that was a fire we had in 2014. And so we have a really good, obviously a lot to talk about here with the city. We're kind of busybodies in the city. We spend all of our time here, and we love it. We love this town, and this town has taken us in, and really molded us into who we are today.
I can now see, and I now understand why your building construction tour is so good.
Right.
Because you have someone on the inside.
Right.
I love it.
Right.
Man, I'd have never known that.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Excellent. You were studying for engineer, and this is something that I've never forgot. When you were studying for engineer, I was brand new, and back in 2010, you guys were pre-planning every day.
Mm-hmm.
It was pre-plan this. Here goes Rescue 14. Pre-planning, like I couldn't tell you how many buildings a day, and we would join on occasion. It wasn't that often, but we would still join you guys here and there. And it was most of the time when you guys were pre-planning something cool. No one wants to go pre-plan like so-and-so Baptist church that's like your everyday, like we only want to go to the cool stuff.
Right.
So I remember that, and I remember going to the Florida School of Deaf and Blind,
mm-hmm.
and you'll have to correct me if I'm wrong, but I want to say it was either you were studying for engineer or it was something to do with your engineer test. And if that wasn't it, it was impressive because you walked all of us through that school and knew everything about it. And that was my first exposure to what a pre-plan should be like. And I actually did one not yesterday, but the day before, and I still kind of visit that mentally,
mm-hmm.
Because what I found is if you're doing your job correctly, if you're pre-planning correctly, the maintenance people know a lot about that building, but we end up actually educating them about some of the stuff, and at least when it comes to our response, and it was like as if you knew everything about that whole property, and for people who don't know, that's a big property.
Yep.
There's a lot going on in there.
Well, we put a lot of onus on that. That's a big part of what we do here in the city is historic preservation in essence, right? So it's such a unique district, and that's not to take away from anybody else's district, but when you have old and new and buildings that are 100 plus years old, you can't rebuild those. There is no replacing those.
Yeah.
And so the fact that we know every little thing about our district is ingrained in us from the beginning. Like, it's a huge part of our probationary process. Like, street tests, FDC tests, zone familiarization is huge for us. We put a lot of influence on that, and we invest in that. And on the back end, at 2:00 in the morning, whether it's a fire alarm and you're trying to find a panel or something, or if it's a real job, it pays off, and everybody knows where they're going, and we spend a lot of time on pre-planning and pre-incident planning and that kind of thing.
I'm sure that helps. Like everyone in the department is basically pre-planning the same, area. It's like, so the square mileage wise, you're going to get a lot of eyes on it.
Right.
But your shift is your shift.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So unless your eyes go on it, one thing that doesn't happen is we don't come on to shift or go on off of shift having long conversations about what we learned on the pre-plan.
Right.
It's up to us to go out there and figure it out on our own, but the dynamic and the information you can gather from two separate shifts could be two totally different things from the same building.
Right.
You got the guy who knows everything about the fire alarms, and then you got the guy who knows everything about like the sprinkler system or whatever. It just depends on where the information's coming from.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah.
I didn't know that you were on B shift.
Yeah.
For a while.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. For a short period of time, it was, 3 years, 2 or 3 years as the engineer. And I was assigned to the island station then. Our rank structure reflected the rank structure you guys had then, where our engineers were station officers, Legionnaires as they were coined.
Legionnaires.
So perfectly coined.
Right.
So I got my time over there, and then I promoted back to C, and stayed on C shift there for, like I said, almost 8 years up until recently.
Yeah, C shift was a time. I left. When did I leave West King the first time? It's like 20, because I left a year before I got promoted, and I got promoted in 20, so it would have been 19. So I left for the first time in 2019, and I went to 5, and was there for a year, got promoted, and went to 8.
Yeah, I remember that.
Right, I was in 8 for 2 years, and then back 2021 or 22, somewhere around there.
Yeah. Talk about a difference in district.
Oh my
from
God.
14 and 5 to going to 8. I mean, you might as well go to the moon.
And I honestly, I loved Station 5. I was with one of the most fun crews you could be with. They were aggressive. They played aggressive. They fought fire aggressive. It was pretty tremendous to be with those guys. And you go to 8, and then it's like, so when I made lieutenant, I was one of the fortunate ones to where when a lieutenant was leaving, a beloved lieutenant was getting promoted to captain.
Yep.
And I ended up in his spot, which was, those are, Captain Anderson's shoes were tremendous shoes to fill.
No pressure.
No, not at all. And his crew, I worked for him for several years, so I know what he's about, and I know what they're expecting. It was a lot.
Right.
But it was good for me because the slowness of it allowed me to kind of groom the administrative level of it a little bit. Mm-hmm. And it also helped that I knew everyone there really well.
Right.
which honestly, in the end, I don't know if that actually helped or hurt me. But I think I benefited from it greatly. But fast forward through that 2.5 years, Station 11 was supposed to be built. And I remember hearing about Station 11 in the COVID pod, of all places. And I was sitting next to my battalion chief, Chief Steen, and I remember looking at him and said, that's where I want to land. And this is before we had a bidding process, before any of that stuff. I was like, that's where I'll be.
Yeah.
And
look at you now.
I stayed with it, but little did I know that it was going to take almost 3 years for it to come about. And so we had a captain from the north, Captain Newman, who I, she's one of my friends. I love her to death. She was coming down from the north, and she and I had a conversation about where she wanted to be in Station 8 and she wanted to be on C shift. And I was like, listen, I don't want to leave 8. I want to go to 11. It's like, those aren't the same things, but I'll move and spend, then I thought it was going to be a year. I spent a year wherever the hole is, and in my mind I'm thinking I'm going back to 5. Yes. Well, there wasn't a hole at 5. There was only a hole at West King. So the chief had to come and have that conversation with me. He's like, listen, I kind of need you to go back to 14. It'll be a year-ish. And it took I think it took 2.5 or whatever it took. It felt like forever again. And yeah.
We had some good times.
We did.
We had some good
runs.
We did,
but I spent that whole time on C shift. And once 11 opened, I didn't make the cutoff for our new bid system, so I did it on B shift, and here we are. B shifters together again. Yeah. So I want to talk to you somewhat about promotion, the promotion process, like what you. Because before we started recording, you and I chatted a little bit, and we might revisit a little bit of that for everyone else. We talked a little bit about our test preparation, maybe rituals, if you will, and some of the like how it was received by old crews, new crews. Because we have a similar dynamic, but you guys are all, you can't really promote and see new faces. Like when you promote, you're going to see the same faces, but so talk a little bit first about your promotional preparation.
Sure. So we are one of the few departments in the area that is still civil service. So our hiring and our promotions are governed by civil service rules, essentially. Ultimately, the fire chief has the final say in selection, but as far as eligibility, that's governed by civil service. And so that's how rather than having it in policy, we have it in civil service. And any policy that we do have reflects the civil service rules.
Does if I may, if you're promoting to engineer or lieutenant, does your civil service test, is it like rank specific? Like are they asking you things from an engineer's perspective, lieutenant perspective, captain perspective? They
are now. There's been a number of us, myself included, that have served on the Civil Service Board. So for those that aren't familiar with civil service, the Civil Service Board is made up of 5 members. It's 3 civilians, 1 police representative, and 1 fire representative. And there's been a number of us, myself included, I'm still the fire representative now, currently, that have made a lot of adjustments to the way that we test over the years. We're talking over 15 years. And one of our biggest one of our biggest examples of the changes that we've made is that we've customized the tests now to where those tests have our SOPs integrated, and they are more specific to our region. That was a big win for us, because when I came on, the first time I tested for engineer and lieutenant, they were generic, and basically you get 4 or 5 textbooks, and it could be anything and everything out of those 4 or 5 textbooks.
Like
not like chapter specific, not SOP specific.
Geez.
It was, hey, here's 3,000 pages worth of stuff to read, and we're going to test you on any of it. And I remember getting test questions in my engineer's test on ice rescue, or like icy conditions on the road and stuff. Like it had nothing to do with the city of St. Augustine or St. Johns County.
Okay.
And so we in the last 5 years or so, with the support of our fire administration, we've made some big changes to customizing those tests and making them more specific. And we've seen a lot of success, I think, in the pass rate, but also quantifying things that are a little bit more specific to us, and it helps them to make better decisions as to who's the better candidate, and not like you just take a really good test, right? You know what I mean? Like if you're just taking a generic test, anybody can do that, but can you take a test that's specific to your jurisdiction and your department? And I think it's shined through. I think it's the last 3 or 4 exams that we've had at all ranks. You could really tell that it brought that out, and people were a little bit more engaged because they felt like they had a better shot at getting a better score, right? So so that was huge. And so with us, to kind of get back to what you were asking, with us, if a position comes available or positions come available, it gets posted. You have it's 30, 45, 60 days, just depends on the scenario, of study time. The study material gets posted, sign-up sheet gets posted. We have minimum requirements based on education per rank, and if you meet those requirements, you can put your name on the list. They'll announce a test date. You sit for the exam, which is a written exam. It's not practical. As long as you get a passing score, you move on to the eligibility list, which is good for 12 months. And everybody on that eligibility list goes before an interview board, which tends to change depending on the scenario, and depending on the rank. But you'll go before an interview board, series of questions, basic stuff, nothing crazy, nothing practical. But you go before you have your interview, and then ultimately the fire chief has the final say as to who he or she's going to pick on that eligibility list.
Are they ranked by that after that interview? Are you ranked, or do you stay in the rank of your test?
It's not that we don't put a numeric value.
Okay, so it's a list of names.
Everybody, and that's So, and like you said, for us being so small, we're only 2 stations. We're 33 on the combat side. Yeah. Every day is your interview. I mean, let's be real. You could get 100 on the test, and you could have a phenomenal interview and a phenomenal resume. Right. But everybody in that room knows what you did on that last call.
Well,
right, and that's your interview.
The chief's office is 3 doors down.
Correct. Yeah. So putting a numeric value on the stuff, I mean, there's a hard argument to be made for that, and we go round and round with that as a membership. Trust me. But at the end of the day, it's like that's a double-edged sword for us, right? And so there's always a better system, and we're constantly reevaluating to improve our system, and we've done that with our. We've made a lot of changes to our educational requirements, and again, customizing the tests were 2 big jumps for us for a small department. And there's more room, for improvement. Like I said, it's not a perfect system, but that's what we have today.
Right.
So,
what if when you're preparing for a test, what is your mode of preparation, if you will? Because before we started this, I was talking to Brandon about my trials and tribulations of studying for tests, and this isn't coming from a great test taker. This is coming from one of probably the worst test takers in the world, me personally. I studied for 6 months straight, and that's where we have it over top of you guys.
Right.
Like we have a pile of time to prepare.
Right.
They give us 6 months to prepare,
Mm-hmm.
and I studied and I poured myself all over it. And I think I think our list was 23 people, and I scored number 22.
Right.
So I was, even after all the preparation, all the reading, I just sucked at it.
Right.
And so I'm just curious, because everyone who's going to hear this is going to be faced with a promotional test.
Sure.
And faced
Hopefully.
with the how do I prepare, or faced with this question. And I'm just curious, because you have successfully promoted 2 times since I've met you.
Mm-hmm.
And so I give me a sense of how you prepare, because my tactics suck at it.
Yeah, I mean, everybody's got their way of learning and retention. For me, we get, like I said, it's usually about 45 days of study time. So I am not a cram kind of person. Like I can't do that. Like I can't wait till the last minute and cram. Like as soon as that reading list gets posted, I'm buying books. I'm buying study guides. Like they're in the mail by the end of the day, because I gotta get to it. But with that being said, the day that the books arrive, I'm not reading that whole book cover to cover. Like it's a marathon. It's not a sprint. You have a month, 2 months, or whatever the case may be, and so I'll set a timer. Basically, hey, I'm going to study an hour every day, or 2 hours every day, or 3 hours. It just depends on the amount of content, right? Because every promotion's got a different amount of content. But we'll just say, for argument's sake, hey, I'm doing an hour a day, right? If I have 45 days, that's 45 hours of study time, and that's that's a chapter. I can read a chapter in an hour. I can read 2 chapters in maybe an hour and a half or something like that. So most of your textbooks are going to be maybe 14 to 20 chapters or something like that. That's a whole textbook in 2 weeks, So that's where I feel like trying to read too much of it, you're not going to retain any of it. If you're reading chapter 1 today, this is at least for me, if I'm dedicating myself to chapter 1 today, I'm going to know everything and anything about chapter 1. That's my mission today. I'm not worried about chapter 2, 3, 4, 5. Small goals, not chapter 1. I'm going to read chapter 1 cover to cover. I'm going to know everything about chapter 1. I'm going to make flashcards. I'm going to do the study guides. Like I always buy the study guides. Every textbook has a study guide associated with that textbook. And I highly recommend those, because even if those questions are not on your test, it puts you in the mindset of reading questions from beginning to end, looking through the answers, that selection process of, okay, D's definitely not it, A's definitely not it, now I'm down to B and C. All right. And, just getting you in that test mode, which in this last test, that I was pretty front heavy on my career, and so most of the exams and certifications and everything that I took early on. So I was out of practice for this last exam. Like I haven't taken an exam for anything since I took the lieutenant's exam 8 years ago. So I was out of practice for taking tests, Right.
So I spent a lot of time doing those practice tests in the study guides. And, I think that's where you're not looking for the home run ball. You're looking for the single and the double. And the single and the double is learning everything there is to know about whatever parameter of material you're going to cover that day, and being that subject matter expert on chapter 1 today, and I'll worry about chapter 2 tomorrow, just as an example. So that's worked for me, and I've done that on every exam, and I've had a lot of success with that. Now, I know a lot of people that they'd rather just wait until the week before and start cramming, and that works for them too. I cannot do that. I would be in a tailspin if I did that.
I have no idea how people can do that and function during the test. Like that's just so foreign, that whole idea.
Right.
Just just pour. It's like open your mouth or open your ears and just pour all this information in, and all this, I'll be able to line it up. No,
Right.
I will not be able to line it up. It's
Yeah.
going to be like all of it's out the window.
Yeah, that's a gift. I mean, if you can, and then there's those people that just don't study at all. They just walk in and they just nail it. You know what I mean?
We have those
God bless
too.
them.
We have those too. We have we have flashcard makers. I tried that. That didn't work.
Right.
I tried. I can't say that I tried the method you're talking about. Is only focus on one. Like have a small goal. Like I'm gonna know everything and put it all aside. Like the ADHD in me. It's like all the other chapters are gonna be hovering over top of my head, and I won't be able to retain what I'm looking at. And that was and I'll be the first to admit, I with the lieutenant's test, like I was on Adderall and still made last, almost next to last on the list.
Right.
And I think I should have been last, but it just is what it was.
It's so easy to get just kind of sucked in by the overall amount of content.
Yeah.
And but that's like I have to like, hey, this is where I'm stopping today, because otherwise I'm going to wander way off the reservation, and I'm going to start doing the old cover to cover flip, and I'm going to find myself on chapter 18 when I haven't even finished chapter 2.
I saw that back here. Let me flip,
it's like
flip
that
to the back.
To me. That's detrimental. Like I cannot process. I have to process this information in one step at a time. And I mean, that's generally how your books are laid out anyway. They're referring to things in chapter 4 and 5 that they're assuming you've already understood in chapters 1, 2, and 3. Right. And if you're in 4 and 5 and you haven't fully comprehended 1, 2, and 3, you're already now you're falling behind.
Where were you when I was studying for the lieutenant's test?
Oh man, I wish you'd have called.
Let's move forward a little bit to after your promotion to captain. This is pretty recent. You're one of the beloved lieutenants, at least from my perspective, because not our entire department has had an interaction with the city of St. Augustine. It's more than just a auto aid relationship, like because we the buses that run out of 14 see you guys almost every shift, if not every single 100%. Shift, multiple times. So it's maintaining that good working relationship. It's knowing each other's differences and respecting it. And so moving from rank to rank, that's dragging a lot of that stuff with you. You're dragging your reputation with you, right? And luckily for you, you have a good reputation, at least from what I can tell. We all have our own views of how people view us. Some of us care a lot less than others do, and take that for whatever you will. But you're now what does the city consider a captain? Are you a supervisor? Yeah. So essentially, in essence, a battalion captain on a suppression apparatus. That's essentially what we are. We are the shift supervisor for that entire shift, and every shift has, captain, 2 lieutenants, 3 engineers, and firefighters. So you're the supervisor for both stations.
Correct.
Out of the main.
For the district, right?
Out of are you relegated to the main station?
The captains have the option to go to the island station, but there obviously has to be a lieutenant downtown, to fill that role. Right. It's not very common, but it happens from time to time. It might happen for a brief period. We try to give the other lieutenants the opportunity to kind of develop and run the shift and stuff like that. Yeah. So it depends on the circumstance, but I would say 90% of the time the captain is going to be downtown, because that's just kind of where the job
more
calls
people,
them to be.
More problems,
it's just part of the job.
Everything.
Yeah.
I recall back in the day when there was several shifts at West King where we were all firefighters, and the new people that just came on, maybe some of them don't know this, but back in the day, you used to be able to ride up from the back seat all the way to the officer's seat
in all of our apparatus, whether it's a rescue, an engine. And I recall, many days at Station 14 where it's five firemen and a battalion chief, and he's the South BC, so he's gone all day, and so the criminals are running the prison, if you will.
Right.
So I to tie this into what we're talking about. Imagine being the captain and being the lone captain, 4 young firemen, all with our own, fireman idiosyncrasies, all firing at the same time.
Oh yeah.
All of us in our 20s and 30s. Yeah, that's got to be a lot.
We've had some similar circumstances over the years. I will say that's another improvement that we've made to our organizational chart, and also our rank structure through civil service was bringing those 3 engineers online and having a captain, 2 lieutenants, 3 engineers, and then the rest firefighters. That was huge, because when I came on, and like you remember, every shift had 1 captain, 1 lieutenant, 1 engineer, and then your firefighters. And since then we've added an extra body per shift, so we're now at 11 per shift. And then reorganizing that org chart has been huge for us, and put a lot of ownership in those positions, and kind of not necessarily officially, but more or less unofficially, kind of set that more natural progression of learning to be a backseat firefighter, learning to be a driver engineer, learning to be a company officer, and kind of set that progression, and step-by-step type progression. We still have the option to promote out of rank, but it's a little less likely to happen today, just based on how we set our responsibilities, and kind of learning that one step at a time type mindset.
It sounds like it would be glorious, to the firefighter out there, the idea, like, you mean to tell me that I can study for lieutenant and not have to be an engineer?
Right.
It sounds like it would be a huge pay raise, and I guess it would be.
Right.
But I will tell you firsthand that there are things that you have to go through in order to be good at even just the next step, not just if you're going to skip a step. If anyone was ever put in that situation, and I imagine with the city, it is still a possibility, although very rare. You would have to have brought a lot with you, life experience, job experience with you, to be able to see all the nightmares, because and that's how we learn. We don't learn by, it's like you can read all the Freudian textbooks and all the leadership, read the Chief Lasky's book, you read all these things, but until you have a bunch of like out of control gorillas at the station, one of them's got, home problems, one of them's got like sleep problems, and, the Chief Steen had said at one time, he says, and he's absolutely right. He says, you can, fighting fire and solving emergencies, it's tough. He said, but the toughest part of this job is dealing with people. And he's absolutely right. And it's not even, it's not 100% solving their issues, because this is our journey at the same time. Right. So, my response to some of these things wasn't always grand, so it's sometimes we're, me and whoever it is are learning this lesson at the same time, and being humble enough to say, listen, I kind of shit the bed on this one, but maybe you and I can see where we both find a common ground on this, or this was probably the best way that, both of us should have handled it.
Right.
But without, being the engineer and having to be the example of a firefighter underneath of you, that's the first, it was whether you're used to it or not, from the station level, once you're handed that new helmet and the responsibilities, write on a piece of paper, slide across the table, whatever analogy you want, once that's handed to you, you feel it. Mm-hmm. Even some to more of a degree than others. But that engineer now will at least have some sense of, this guy is watching my every move. Mm-hmm. And and if you haven't got to that point, I would tell anyone who's an engineer, then you need to self-police yourself, because the guy, the girl, whoever's riding behind you is going to become a version of you. Mm-hmm. How you check off the truck, how you talk to your officers, how you allow yourself to be talked to. Mm-hmm. Right. And that's one of those things that, I'd be willing to say that over the years, we are getting much better at approaching each other, but knowing our boundary of how we are to be talked to. Right. And that's one of those, things that I was just downstairs earlier, we're talking to some of the e-board members, that's some of those things that you don't know till you got here. They can say, well, you signed up for this, but there's no way for you to see all these little things coming. I didn't sign up, I signed up to fight fires and to be a fireman and to help people. I didn't necessarily sign on that dotted line to say that I'm going to help somebody through the worst divorce that you can imagine. Mm-hmm. But that's very well could be what I have to do. Mm-hmm. As their company officer. Mm-hmm. Or as the engineer. That could be something that you have to do for your firefighters, your peers, or even me leading up in rank is, one of those things I would suggest anyone to do. We all should be setting an example. And the idea that only the officers can do this it's a kind of a ludicrous one, because we all are responsible for our behaviors, and we're all being watched. I kind of went off on a tangent there for a second, but talking about your promotion from lieutenant to captain, how has that changed for you? Like, and this plays in exactly what we were just talking about, like, because now your responsibilities are greater.
Sure.
Now the crew that you left knows Lieutenant Seymour. The crew that you have now knew Lieutenant Seymour, because you guys all you're in the same house. Mm-hmm. So what if has there been any like self-policing, or has there, because, and I think you're one of the best people for this conversation, and because we have a lot of newly promoted officers who are in a similar position. Mm-hmm. But I think that you could offer some kind of at least window into like your mindset, knowing you got to look these people in the eye every day. Right. That you were not buddies, but I led you from this perspective. Now I have to lead you from this. Right. What was that like?
First of all, I had a phenomenal time as a lieutenant. Like, I enjoyed every single day, and I did not think that I would be where I am today at this point. That was part of the plan in the back of my mind, but you never know when that position is going to come available, and you got to make the decision. You're going to go for it, you're not going to go for it. Right. But I was perfectly content with what I was doing, and the beautiful part about the rank of lieutenant is you get the opportunity to impact every day. You get the opportunity to influence every day. But in our system, ultimately the captain's making the final decision, whether everybody likes it or everybody doesn't like it. It's the captain's call, right? So you're like the lightning rod with the rank and file, between the rank and file and the captain, right? Hey, and so yes, there is a lot of ownership. Yes, there's a lot of leadership. There's a lot of responsibility, and the lieutenant in our system is asked to fulfill the role of captain on a regular basis. Every time the captain's on a vacation day, sick day, whatever, that lieutenant is bumping up to that captain spot.
That's one of those situations that we don't have.
Right,
and
right.
I think some of us are missing out on that.
So I got a lot of practice at being in that role. So for me, in my circumstance, after 8 years of being a lieutenant, how many times I was an acting captain in that period, I couldn't even tell you. I had a lot of practice, and I think I got a lot of my kinks ironed out in that time, so that when the position actually did come available and I was able to fulfill that role, I had already kind of ironed a lot of those adjustments that you got to make when you make that jump between lieutenant and captain. So I was prepared for it, right? And so I could definitely see, where if you were never put in that position and all of a sudden now you're in that position, that being a little bit more of a culture shock. Whereas with us in our system, we're based on that next person up type system. Like, the captain's off, the lieutenant bumps up. If the lieutenant's off, the engineer bumps up. If the engineer's off, the firefighter bumps up. And so that's the premise of kind of how we don't fill rank for rank, for overtime and that kind of thing. So if somebody goes out, whether it's a vacation day or sick day or they're on work comp or whatever the case may be, then there's a bump up. Everybody's bumping up, and you're constantly getting that opportunity to fulfill that next role, which really, even if you don't realize it, it's preparing you for that next spot, all the time. So I had the opportunity to run the shift on C shift, a number of times and operate on different types of calls and different types of incidents, and be incident commander, be inside, be outside, and then also kind of being that person like you talked about, being that peer support person. Everybody's got stuff going on, and if anything, they're more apt to kind of turn to the lieutenant, because now the captain's kind of almost considered admin, like quasi-admin. So people were a little bit more apt to turn to that engineer or that senior fireman or that lieutenant. So I had a lot of practice, and very grateful for that, because it really prepared me for taking the next step. Even if I didn't expect to take that step at this point, it was kind of unexpected, the position coming available. I was ready.
Did you seek it out? So were you the only lieutenant on shift?
So before we reorganized the org chart, yes.
Okay.
So probably whatever that was, 4 or 5 years. The first 4 or 5 years I was a lieutenant, I was the only lieutenant.
But I remember you because you were with Fitty. Fitty was the captain. So we had a captain. You were the lieutenant, and then there would be a engineer.
Yeah.
Engineer, and then 2 firefighters, I suppose, or a handful of firefighters.
Right. There would be, at that time, was 7 firefighters for the rest of the shift.
Okay, I see.
So
I can see how that would be, there's not necessarily a competition factor that you got to deal with. Like, there's another lieutenant who's getting bumped up today to be the captain.
Right.
And that, that would help you. As far as that dynamic.
Right. Yeah. So having that second lieutenant, however they split, every shift is different, so however they split those responsibilities is kind of me and Lieutenant Murphy were together for a number of years. And
yeah, so there would be 2 lieutenants, because there is
now.
You're right. There's
now
a lieutenant on the island,
right?
And there's a lieutenant downtown,
correct.
And there's a captain downtown,
correct?
Right. So it would be, the choice of the 2 lieutenants who gets moved up to captain.
Right.
Okay. So there, it's there somewhat.
Yeah. Everybody kind of figures it out.
How'd you get so blessed? Jeez, with having Murph and Fitty? I want to tell you something about Captain Fitty. For years, we loved hearing his radio traffic. And I, as much as I would love to have like the great like arrival reports and radio traffic, it would come out like a complete and total travesty.
Right.
His radio traffic is legendary.
Right.
I just had to get that in there. I don't know if I know that other people feel that way, but holy cow, it's listening to his arrival sometimes is just a treat in itself.
So I'll say that is one of the transitions, from lieutenant to captain for me personally is, I'm like most, company officers, you're if you go to conferences, you go to classes, you're constantly trying to better yourself, and you have your standards and you have your ways of doing things, and whether that's station life or operationally, on the fire ground. And as a lieutenant, you can influence that and you can kind of steer that to a point, but then ultimately it's going to be the captain's call.
Right.
And so over the years I've had all these ideas and things that I want to do and things that are important to me and specific things, and for most of them I was able to implement them because I always had a great working relationship with the two captains that I worked with in my career, which was Captain Jinks, Von Bretzel, and Captain Fitty. And so for the most part it was, hey, here's the keys, don't screw up, and if you screw up you're going to answer to me, so
right.
I had a lot of support from them, but it's their shift, right? At the end of the day, it's their shift.
Mm-hmm.
And so actually getting the position and being able to take the best of Captain Jinks, take the best from Captain Fitty, take the best from people who I've learned from all ranks and from multiple departments, yourself included, St. Johns County, just taking the absolute best from a little bit from everybody. That's made that influence in my career, and being able to put it together in a package that fits my standards and my outlook on what I want this department to look like, what I want this shift to look like,
right?
And to be able to do that officially,
right,
is liberating. Quite frankly,
well,
it's liberating.
Your arrivals are very Fitty-like, and you can tell that he's rubbed off on you. And with him, his accent, if you will, plays into it, and but mostly what I take away from his arrivals is how calm he is when he does it. I mean, it could be a 2-story house ripping in the city, and he'll say, "Just we're on scene. It's a working fire," and he'll start positions and start positioning people and doling out responsibilities, and it's as if I'm talking to you right now. It's
right.
like where did the stone come from?
Right.
In his voice, like
right.
To me, I'm still working on that. Like that's one of the things that I'm on my list that I'm dealing with is taking a breath before I talk over the radio,
right?
And policing the things that I say, because I also have a habit of playing radio games where I'll I'll do some regular talk, and there's a time for that, but
right.
I don't want to say I am what I am,
sure,
but in a way that I don't want to say being original is the way to be, but and it's hard to tell somebody just be yourself,
right?
Because I don't know who I am.
You're
Everyone
right.
else knows who I am.
Yeah.
But taking away from I don't know how to escape from that yet. Escape from the fact that everyone's listening. If I could, if I could just get the words to come out as if I'm, talking to my neighbor,
right?
It would come out probably a lot closer to what I want than me trying to think about what's happening and get it out of my face at the same time and it not sound like a shit sandwich, if
right.
you will.
It's
still a work in progress here, and I've talked over the radio for a lot, and it's still, I'm working on it.
Yeah.
But I use him and a couple other people, their radio mannerisms, and it's getting there.
I just I think about what I think Chief Lasky's the one that says it best. Is just act your wage, just
Whether you're on the radio,
I'm gonna write that in parentheses.
Whether you're walking down the hallway at the firehouse, or you're on the radio, or anything, act your wage.
If
you just act your wage, that probably won't steer you wrong. And that goes both ways, not overdoing it or underdoing it.
I think I needed to hear that.
He said it. I don't know if he's like the one that coined it. I've heard him. I listened to him a lot, and I've heard him say it a lot. And it's like that's one of those light bulb, buzz phrases, that just kind of like hits you in the feels. It's like, oh, okay, I gotcha.
Yeah.
I love it.
I definitely needed to hear that.
Yeah.
All right, we had to take a short intermission there for a second. I think we left off with us, talking about acting our wage. Uncle Shane needed to hear that, and especially when I have a habit of leading. Sometimes I can't say I'm leading them, but because that may not be what I'm doing, but trying to you lead up in rank, right? Be kind of the voice of the person that I'm in their charge, because I need that. I need to be, and that just comes from me recognizing that once in a while my engineer would have to come to me and say, hey, you didn't. Let's have a chit chat real quick.
Keep you on the rails.
Yeah, keep me in my lane and keep me acting my fucking wage.
That's
right?
Firehouse life.
And I would say that at least from the county's perspective, that's one of the things that is lost, and not completely. But what I would say to anyone out there in any fire department, right? You're a person, right? You're a human being. You're a grown man, grown woman. Regardless of age, if you're here, you're grown,
right?
And there's a way you will be talked to, and there's a way you won't be talked to, and know the difference. But also know that goes in the other direction too. That there's a way that you will talk to your peers. There's a way you will talk to your officers, and it's supposed to be reciprocated, right? It's supposed to be a mutual understanding, and I won't say of rank, because we all know who we are, but let's not let our rank overshadow the fact that I'm talking to another human being.
Sure.
Who, if for instance, I could come into work one day and I'm bringing home to work with me, right? And my firefighter might need something from me that day, and if I'm bringing work, or if I'm bringing home to work with me, he doesn't necessarily know that. He or she may not necessarily know that. So what if that's the day? And not to paint it in a dark light, but what if that's the one day he decided to reach out to you personally, and the off-putting comment or the dreary look on my face made it so that he doesn't want to approach me, and he approaches someone else, or he or she could very well get it in their mind that I'm not approachable when it comes to personal things. And it was that moment that set it in motion in the future. So not only did I potentially alienate someone who's supposed to be able to trust me unknowingly, right? So it's that's one of the hard parts of this job, is seeing that, and it's growing pains. Like, we're going to do it. Nobody's going to be perfect at it. But if the more we do that stuff, the more it would become part of our culture to be that way. Mm-hmm. And so there'll be a little bit less and a little bit less and a little bit less of it. Because right now it's kind of like the Wild West out there.
Right.
We have a couple of supervisors, and everyone will remain anonymous, but we have at least one supervisor who you don't know who they're going to be. Right. And I'm going to tell you right now that's the opposite of the way they need to be. Like, your people need to be able to form what they're going to say to you when they show up to work, even if it's something they need for the truck, for the station. If you're hot and cold, what they're going to do is just give up. Like, well, I'm not going to approach him because I don't know who I'm going to get.
Right.
And you can even tie this back into, this is part of the reason why you need to, if you were to skip a rank, you need time inside of a station for all these things to just kind of to show up. But so you could inadvertently turn someone away who needs you by not being, by bringing something to work that should have stayed at home, or not being a person yourself.
Yeah.
Not being an approachable person.
It's leadership for me. It's the 3 C's. It's consistency, competency, and compassion. If you can have those 3 things, you can build off of that. That's the keys to success. Is I want somebody, even in myself and my supervisors, I want to know I'm getting the same person every day, that they know what the hell they're doing, and at the end of the day, they know they're a human being, and they know that I am too, right? And I can work with that.
Right.
And coincidentally, I want the same thing from my people.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I want out of them, because why should it be any different, right? Our expectations of each other should be the same, right? Now, obviously, as you progress up through rank, there's different responsibilities there, of course. Yeah, 100%, right? And we get that. But as far as minimum standards as to what we should expect from each other, both from our leaders and from our peers and subordinates alike, is, hey, I want you to come in and be who I expect you to be. I want you to be competent so that you can be confident, and then also understand that you're a human being and I am too. And if we can use that as a platform to build off of, the sky's the limit.
You can build anything off of a platform like that.
That's it.
And
right.
Your people will feed and grow in an environment when you're consistent. And I have said this before on another podcast, and I believe it 100%, that you could be a terrible leader, like a terrible person to approach, like just the ass, if you will, of the department.
Sure.
But if that's the way you always are, people will be able to form how they're going to approach you with stuff,
right?
Because they know what you're going to get. We had a leader like that, and he's not with us anymore, but he was the worst.
Right.
But at least he was consistent.
Yeah.
So
right.
And then we also have a supervisor now who's, like I said, he's hot and cold. Mm-hmm. And I would venture to say that the consistent guy who's a jerk can be more productive and get more done than the guy who's hot and cold. I would, because I tell you what, I'll put it to you this way: even at the dinner table, the guy who's a jerk, I know how to handle him, because he's always a jerk.
Right.
I'm either gonna
mentally
hammer him
for that,
or I'm just gonna ignore him. Probably
right.
I'm gonna ignore him, and everyone will ignore him, and it'll just become that.
Right.
And maybe in that, an adjustment may or may not come about, but we all would know how to handle that. But, I guarantee you that guy would be more productive being consistent. So I wouldn't suggest anyone try to be.
Yeah. Here, try this
out. Don't be an asshole. Let me just be.
Sean said
I could be a jerk as long as I'm consistent.
Yeah.
But compassion, I agree. You have to have it. I don't know how to. You can't teach someone that. The only way that comes across is action.
Right.
And so that's one of those growing pains that would probably be the hardest one to do, because they won't learn it by reading about, like, you can read Lao Tzu and all these things about being, how to be, one with this and that, and how to be great, and how to be, but it's going to be for nothing if you're, with a guy who's just, talks down to everyone and has a negative attitude all the time. You're going to be and it's so true. You are the 5 people that you're around all the time.
Yeah.
You are a combination of those 5 people, and ironically, how many of us are at the fire station?
Right. Yeah. No, 100%.
And how much influence does that negative guy have on everyone else? I've witnessed this. You'll have a station full of really positive people, like good firemen, good people, but you'll have the negative guy there, and who will they talk about almost all the time? Even when he's gone.
Right.
Even when he's gone, be like, oh yeah, well, so and so, he would have been so negative about this. That guy, it's being that guy. It's a disease, but the lack of compassion, is. That's one of those things that would be hard to describe, but you know it when it's there.
Yeah.
And your people will know it when you don't have it.
Right.
Especially when they come to you with something and you're like, shut up.
Yeah.
Or, take this somewhere else.
Right.
I don't have time for you. I can't deal with this.
Yeah.
And that's probably one of the worst things, that could ever be said to someone below you, especially your fireman who's 22 years old.
Right.
And just got his girlfriend pregnant or something like that. Hey, can I talk to you? Nah.
Yeah.
Nah, hang on.
Yeah, you're getting
I'm busy. Like,
you're getting one shot at that conversation.
One shot.
Yeah.
And then you know what he's going to do? He's going to ask the fireman next to him for advice.
Right.
Now look what you did.
Right. Yeah. Right. Yeah, no, that's true. And talk about consistency. Like, I feel like there's so much inconsistency that is inherent to our job that most of us are yearning for a little bit of consistency. Like, we have our routines. Like, we know we're coming in at a certain time. We know we got to check the rigs. We know there's going to be whatever pre-incident planning or training, but you never know how that day is going to go. You could have a plan in your mind. All right, I'm going to walk in here and we're going to do this, this, and this today, and you not do any of that because the tones go off.
That's
or the chief calls,
shit,
right?
Yeah.
So there's so much inconsistency in our day-to-day routine that I think people are yearning for a little bit of consistency. And even if it's foreign to them, which I know when I came over to B shift, coming from C shift, 2 different animals, I know that there was a lot of things that they were looking at me like, this is not what we do here.
We don't do it this way.
Right.
Yeah.
And I respect that. And we can have those conversations. But at the end of the day, I'm going to be consistent because I'm going to stick with what I know works. And if you can come to me with a more efficient, more safe way of doing it, we'll give it a try. We'll try it in training. We'll try it for a trial period. We'll reevaluate as a crew, right? But if you come to me with, well, I just don't like it because we do it this way, well, I mean, sorry, I'm going to stick with what I know works. And that's on me. Like, I'm signing on the dotted line. I'm the one that's responsible to make this decision. And we can have conversations when it's conversation appropriate, like not on a fire scene, right? But when we're sitting around a kitchen table, we're in a training room, like, let's chat. And that's, you have to be able to have those conversations and be adaptable. And coming to a new shift, I mean, talk about, like, I was on C shift for almost 8 years. Like, that's every third day doing a certain way for almost a decade, right? To come to another shift, obviously there's going to be there's grumbling, those wide eye opening moments where they're like, what is this guy doing? What's he talking about? You know what I mean? And you have to be able to make concessions, and and that's okay. And I'll make all the concessions in the world until a point where I feel like we're dropping below a minimum standard, right? And I'm not going to drop below that minimum standard for anybody, anywhere, anytime. Like, that's you have to make that, you have to delineate where there's going to be that hard line, and for everybody that hard line is going to be in a different place. But station life, who cares as long as we get the stuff done? I don't care if we do A first or B first, as long as we're getting it done. But when it comes to expectations on the fire ground, or how we treat each other with respect, or getting things done throughout the day, and the way we interact with the public, the way that we look in front of the public. Like, those are hard line items for me that I'm not willing to budge on. And, you know, the sooner you have that conversation, as uncomfortable as it might be, the more liberating it's going to be for you. You're going to get over that hump even quicker if you're just upfront. And I've learned that in a number of ways, coming up through the ranks as engineer, lieutenant, now captain. Early conversations that's like huge for the success of both your shift, your apparatus, and the success of whatever operation you might be engaged in at the time. Like
earlier conversations, like expectation wise,
just, you know, top to bottom. Like, hey, what's our daily routine going to be like? What's when I came over to B shift, I sat down, and then when I came over to B shift in what was late June, early July, I didn't come over as a captain. We had an opening, and I was asked to come over and just basically fill that opening until the promotion. So I didn't come over as a captain. Day one, I sat down as a lieutenant with the other lieutenants on the shift, and I said, hey, what do you expect of me? Like, what's your day look like? What's your month look like? How do you run fires? How do you run fire alarms? How do you go to wrecks? How do you do this? And I wanted as much from them as I could possibly get. And I asked them plain and simple, where do you see me fitting in on this shift? And both of them said, just be you. That's pretty much, that was the conversation. That's all I needed to hear. I can be me, right?
Right.
Thank you. Like, and I really appreciated that support. And they gave me the option to kind of run the shift and leading up to the promotion, and because they had both done it at different times in their careers. And they said, hey, you know what? You know, you're new to the shift. This is your chance. Like, you run it. Just do what you think you need to do, and we'll have conversations along the way. But you have my support. And so I ran with it. And the promotion came around, and I was selected. And because I was still fairly new to the shift, they, up until this point, have allowed me to stay. And so, but that early conversation with them pointed us in the right direction. And then from that conversation, that led to sitting down with the rest of the crew, the three of us, as you know, as a unit,
right,
as a leadership team, sat down with the crew in the classroom and said, hey, this is who I am. This is how we're going to do things. You know, I know you do this, this, and this. Let's try this, this, and this. And there was a lot of give and take along the way. You know, just like I said, with station life, operationally, how we do different things. There was some things that I brought to the table that they didn't do or never had really thought about before. And there was things that they brought to the table that I had never done or never thought about before. And we were able to kind of find that happy medium but at the most importantly, we didn't drop below those minimum standards like that we share.
You found out because you took the time to sit down and talk.
Right.
Imagine trying the potentially years it would take to weed through all those differences if you just kind of left it up in the air.
Yeah.
You know, I'll go down this road with you, Brandon, because I've had a lot of crews.
Yeah.
And for the first 8.5 years, I had a lot of crews, but I was like almost the lone piece of furniture who remained at the station, and just people would just come in and out. Mm-hmm. So I've had I've worked for a lot of different people. I've worked for some people that are beloved to me, and I've worked for some people that that I don't necessarily want to be. Uh-huh. But one thing I will tell you is that consistency, is probably the one of the biggest things that you could do as far as a new leader, and it starts with them knowing what that is going to look like from the beginning. And
right.
With my new crew, because I'm a B shifter now as well, and I'm with Lieutenant Brian Sumner and Lieutenant Vinny Garcia, and the three of us, I mean, I want to say it was within the first shift or two. It may have even been on day one. We sat at the breakfast table first thing in the morning, and let them and gave everyone the opportunity to have a say, and told them, because everyone knew where we came from, right. But just what the three of us expected, and it was really just from a personal level,
right?
Because the job is the job, and we will, we're going to train, and we're going to do all this stuff to kind of get our bread and butter down. But that was the first time in my career I had been part of that conversation, and having looked back, I should have been doing that all along.
Yeah.
And and maybe some people can appreciate this or use this for yourself in the future. I would say, for someone who's listening to this and listening to us talk, because this whole podcast was created by me, and born of several officers that I'm very familiar with, and to give some tools to people who are looking to promote, who are newly promoted already,
right?
Or if you're listening to this and you're a firefighter, I'm not doing this to throw officers under the bus, but this is the way that it should be, at least from my perspective,
right?
And but I would tell anyone who's a newly promoted officer, or considering promoting, do that. Sit everyone down, and even if you just sit them down and tell them about yourself,
right.
Let them know where you came from,
right?
And I mean, they'll put the pieces together.
Yeah,
we grew up with a human race around us, so we know you don't have to give us breadcrumb clues. We'll be able to put it together, and your people will be better moving forward had you laid the groundwork like you did and said, hey, because you even started humbly with, what can I do for you?
Right.
And that just was like a hot knife through butter through the tension in the room. Like, what's he about? What's he going to do? And as the leader of a bunch of alpha type A personalities, being humble can be tough. But that's where you'll get the most pay dirt from them, is them knowing that they don't have to buck up against the you that walks in the room, that you're there for them, because I'm there for those people. I'm not there for the citizens. I mean, that's my job. I'm there for those guys who are in the trenches, mm-hmm. Because you can appreciate this. There was a time when we were on the nozzle. There was a time when our fingernails were dirty, mm-hmm. and I was covered in grease, and mm-hmm. I was the guy underneath the fire truck because something wasn't working. Years of that stuff, mm-hmm. But my crew won't let me do it anymore.
Right.
They'll yank me out from underneath of it, or they'll try to distract me when I'm trying to do work. That's we have to be humble in that, because they're like, as much of a path as I'm paving for them, their actions will keep me humble, but they will only get there if I'm there first.
Right. Yeah, and they know what you're about.
They know what you're about, and like I said, I wish I would have had that conversation with some of my previous crews. And we did it, I don't want to say like in official capacity, but it's kind of become our thing.
Right.
So we've sat everyone down at the station on a couple of occasions. Like, hey, all right, gather around, everyone have a seat. We got to have a chat. And we air it all out, and reevaluate, or have to make an adjustment as a team, because, when something's not getting done, it's not, this guy's fault or that guy's fault. Ultimately it comes down to us.
Yeah.
But we'll all grow from this conversation, and it's stick your neck out.
Yeah, it's going to be a little uncomfortable.
It is
for everybody.
It was super uncomfortable.
Everybody in the room, but man,
it's so neat.
It's an investment.
Yeah,
and it's going to pay off.
And when you do it for them, when they will do it, moving down the line, that you are making it okay to be the guy who's willing to be humble and also be the dad and say, listen, right, this happened, we're not going to do that anymore.
Right.
And I'll tell you, like, anyone who knows me will tell you that I will, I talk how I talk, and I have my own hiccups. Like when I'm being yelled at, and if I'm guilty, I'll let you have your say, but you're not going to treat me like you're not going to talk loudly to me. But what I'm working on is when I'm talked loud to, not meeting it with the same intensity. I'm still working on that whole, I'm going to sit back and be calculating and have this cold conversation. I can't. I meet you right where you bring me.
Right.
But the people below me, I don't talk that way to them.
Right.
Because I don't want to be talked to that way.
Yeah.
So the way that I talk to my battalion chief or the captains, and really the captains get it from me probably the worst, and they only get it like that when something has gone sideways. Yeah. But my people, that my peers will never get that from me. The people that work for me will never get that from me.
Because you're consistent.
Because I'm consistently at least that way to them. Now I not to give a long story about it, but I've had a couple of run-ins here in the last couple of months with some of my supervisors over this and that, and I own the parts of it that probably were in, I could have handled it better, but even in that, I am who I am, and I'm consistent across the board. Mm-hmm. Like when you approach me like this, when I'm approached this way, you're gonna get that version of me. Mm-hmm. And my people will see that part of it, and I don't, and I'll be the first person to tell them, listen, I didn't handle that appropriately, but this is the lesson from it, right? Mm-hmm. I went down that road because of a flaw in me, but I'm a person. I will not. This isn't the Marine Corps. Lives are not on the line, so we can treat each other. And you got to look me in the eye tomorrow.
Yeah.
Like, let's not go down that road.
Right.
And to where I just want to turn the corner when you're coming around. I hate that.
Right.
I can't stand that.
Yeah.
And being humble and being up front from the beginning kills a lot of that mess.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. The first time that I would say that I learned the hard lesson of early conversations, I had been promoted to lieutenant, if you will, mm-hmm. and I was the officer on a rig, and it was for whatever reason, we had people moving around that day. For whatever reason, we had 4 people on the rig. We pull up to a first due fire in the county, smoke showing, working fire, and I had a brand new firefighter with me. And this firefighter is a rock star. He now works for the city of Miami. He just graduated Provy School of City of Miami. He's worked for City of Del Rey.
Oh, good for him.
He's moved on, and he's found nothing but success. And
awesome.
he's going to be. He's just barely tipped the iceberg. I mean, he's going to be big, and I'm stoked for him. But rewind back to his early days. This is a funny story. He's in the back seat. He's a young firefighter. He's in the early days, first couple shifts, and I tell him, pull a line. That's all I said. I said, hey, G, pull a line. Mm-hmm. I take off to go do super cool officer stuff and wander around the building and utilities and finish the size up and everything. I come back to the front door. The irons is at the front door with the irons man. He's working on the front door. No line. I'm looking around, the driver's getting the truck and pump. And I look down the street, and there's about 200 feet of LDH going down the road back to the hydrant. And I'm yelling. I'm on the radio. I'm yelling at the top of my lungs at Woody. And this guy, he comes running fast as he can all the way down. He just drops the LDH in the road. He runs all the way, and he's like, sir, he's out of breath. He's like, you said pull a line. You didn't tell me which line. And I was like, so mad in this moment.
Right.
But he was 100% right.
Right.
And I was like, dude, all right, I got you.
Right.
Pulled that line
right here,
right?
And we'll have this conversation later.
Right.
And everything was fine, right? Like fire went out, we didn't lose the block or whatever, no injuries and this and that, no harm, no foul, and nobody else was even there yet. But I learned that moment that early conversations, whether it be operationally or Firehouse life, you got to have them. And that needs to happen like at shift change, your first day, because you never know when that bell is going to go off, or you never know when that day is going to go sideways, even just around the firehouse. And you cannot just expect people to read your mind and think that, you can't assume that they're going to perform at the level that you think that they need to perform, because everybody's coming from a different background, different layers of experience, different cultures, this and that. And, it's sometimes you just got to remind yourself, like, hey, we're going to start at square one, because him pulling that line, he was 100% right. He pulled a line. That was the first line he saw when he got out of the rig. He saw that line, and I didn't tell him otherwise. So, that from that moment on, I was like, okay, this will never happen again. And I laugh about it now. I was not laughing at the time, but that was my one hard lesson. Fortunately, it worked out. Nothing happened, but I would never let that happen again. So
emotions calm down, and
I'm
sure that takes a little bit of time too.
It does,
you're like, okay, pull this one, get to the front door, and then that's honestly, I can even see, after hearing your story, I can see myself in that situation that, we're getting the job done, we're getting the fire knocked down, but now there's another layer on top of the emergency that's there.
Right.
Is, I've embarrassed the both of us.
Right.
I've embarrassed myself most of all by, being not being specific and having a guy who doesn't know what to do, and it's my fault.
Right.
And I've embarrassed him because he doesn't understand that level of responsibility.
Sure.
He doesn't understand that you're to blame. He only understands that he fucked up to the guy who's supposed to trust him the most.
Right.
And again, back to, that might be the one shot. They're, for right or for wrong, is he gonna, how is he going to form his thoughts about conversations with you after that? And it may not, but there's a good chance it could. I can't, he might in his mind be nodding his head at you when you give him direction, but in the back of his mind he's going, all right, what else isn't he telling me? I will give you this. So this very conversation that we're having right now is something that is a failure of, and I'll own it 100%. And I think I know Vinny and Brian enough to say that the three of us would all admit that we have lacked in this very thing we're talking about now. And with the only light that I can shed on that situation is one of our crew members brought it up to us, and imagine the kind of crushing blow that's felt from that. Like, hey, you guys, we really don't know, what exactly you're expecting us to do on this and this and this. And it's like, holy shit, we have really left this big fucking gap in this. And I own it. I 100% did, because I also come from the department where no one ever had that conversation. And that's not an excuse. I mean, that's the reality of it. I own that I should have been doing it regardless. And we've also, we're the kings of just getting the job done with no direction.
Right.
And no direction, like one-on-one wise, and almost no direction, dare I say, even like department wise. Mm-hmm. We would have offensive, defensive, but other than that, there was almost no example of what that specifically looked like.
Yeah.
And we have that now, but I'm even to this day, I'm still due, and our crew is still expecting us, and it will happen very soon, to sit down and say, okay, in this situation, we're going, this is, and I'm even writing it down. I'm not even sure if that's the right way to do it, but I'm, step by step, I will do this. The engineer does this. The firefighter does this. And these are the things that we have to look out for. And this is, and I can't write a goal in the end because the goal is, the goal will be the win, but because every situation is such a question mark,
right?
You can't lay out a plan for every fucking question mark that comes along, because it's every fire is the same suit of the same answer, but our tactics getting there and the emotions are going to be hit and miss. So I'm neck deep in it now, and this is me owning it because I'm gonna put this out there. And honestly, I'm glad that this happened, because Jeremiah McNeish was on one of these, and he, I grew because of something one of the guests threw out there, and this I think is one of those times where it's carving it in that this is happening. And it's just a matter of the only hiccup in getting it done right now is the three of us also do a lot of training.
Right.
So getting us all at the station at the same time is difficult.
Mm-hmm.
Like, one of us is off. One of us is on a trade. One of us, like Vinny is teaching like the entire special ops series. Mm-hmm. Brian does truck week for our new hires. I do pump ops and engine week for the new hires. And I use time off. So it's like, and our people are wanting this now. Yeah. So we may even have to do it from an individual perspective. But what I refused to do was just to do it on my own without the three, me, Brian, and Vinny all getting together and saying, we at least agree on this, because there can be a flavor between the three of us. One of us might like a different tool or what have you.
We're on the same boat. Especially coming. It's the ink isn't even dry yet with some of the movement that we have, and we're getting ready for an engineer's test at the end of the month. So we're going to get a new engineer and stuff like that. So we're in the same boat, man. Yeah. It's like I'm off, the lieutenants are off, and then who's working, and that was the holidays and stuff like that. Plus, it's just the day to day. You get this. All right, we're going to do this today, and then you look at the calendar and you're like, okay, we're not doing that today. You know what I mean? So it's a struggle. You know what I mean? Like we're in the same boat, but hey, we're trying. You know what I mean? So it is what it is. Another thing that comes to mind about early conversations on the operations side. One of the things that I kind of learned along the way when I became a lieutenant was I was setting the board for the day, or our seat assignment board for the day, and I used to be pretty rigid about, like, for example, I'll just say a name, just, hey, Jason's got the irons on this particular rig or whatever, and I would assign a name to that objective or to that tool or whatever, or to that task, I guess would be a better way of explaining it. And where I kind of learned to be careful with that was, you think that Jason's going to be in that seat all day, but then Joe has to jump off the driver's seat from the other rig and Jason slides over. Well, then when that call happens and nobody has the irons, well, I thought Jason had the irons because Jason's now in a different spot. Right. So there's a pitfall with getting too rigid with some of that. Okay. And now I try to hone in on the position, not the person. Right. So this seat is going to be responsible for this objective or this task. Okay. And not so much the name, because as soon as that name goes home sick, or that name's out turning hydrants or doing inspections or something like that, and you show up and that task is not done because everybody else is doing what they were supposed to do, they thought that Jason had the irons. You know what I mean? So there's a little, especially in a small department where we're filling holes all day long.
Do you guys live by the seat assignment board?
No, not in policy, and every shift is a little bit different with that. But from my perspective, we have different positions that are
engineered
right
to perform certain tasks.
Okay.
And obviously it's going to, your manpower and your district ultimately determine your strategy and your tactics, right?
Right.
Who do you have on? What's their level of experience? And where is it? Is it in an apartment complex or is it in a historic district? That's obviously going to change everything. But as a general rule, the engine's going to try to do engine work, going to be stretching lines, going to be doing hydrant water supply. The ladder's going to be doing ladder work, search, forcible entry to the roof, things like that, So obviously if the ladder gets there first and the engine's somewhere else, then that's going to change. If it's in the historic district or if it's in a big box store, that's going to maybe change a little bit. So there's all these variables. It's so hard to get. That's where I struggle. I think that it's hard to not get too rigid. And I want to have a plan. I want to have a playbook just as much as anybody else does, because I believe in that, in the theory of that. And I came up in that playbook type approach to tactics and that kind of thing for all calls, or at least for the hot spots calls. But at the end of the day, you know how it is. Like, you never know what's going to happen in the course of the day, who's going to be coming and what truck you're on and what rig you're on and this and that. So you have to be flexible. And that's where I found not necessarily putting a name to a task or an objective can sometimes be more beneficial, assigning more of a position rather than a name, because that name had kind of bit me in the butt a few times.
Have you ever do you offer a written version of this to your people, or is it just more verbal?
Well, it's funny you say that, because what did we sit through the other day?
The
PDA class,
the
right?
PDA thing.
So we're ironing out however that is going to look for us right now, department wide. I can tell you, when I came on in 2009, I was working with a retired 20-year guy from the city of Orlando, Mike Riley. Most of us worked with Mike. If you've been around a while, you know Mike's story. And he had designed a playbook for C shift at the time, and Captain Jinks was in charge. I think he was a lieutenant. He was the shift officer then. And he did, those guys got together, and right about the time I came on, they had decided as a shift that they were going to operate under that playbook. And that playbook had a plan for residential fire alarms, residential fires, commercial fire alarms, commercial fires, and motor vehicle crashes with and without entrapment. And that was based on seat assignment. It was, hey, this rig does this and this seat does this, and they kept the names out of it. And we trained like that every day, all day. Every fire we went to, every entrapment we went to, we referred back to that playbook, and that was probably some of the most most successful, calls that I think I've been associated with, because it was playbook. And then over the years, we've kind of gotten away from it. We've tried different playbooks, and our manpower has changed, and our rigs have now changed. Back then, we didn't run our ladder first out. That was a last out. If we had extra people, we would run it. It was an optional rig. Now we're running the ladder first out of downtown with the engine. So things have kind of evolved, manpower operationally, to where we're circling back to more of that playbook style approach. But I think everybody's in a little bit of a wait and see pattern, because what you guys are going to do, what we're going to do, how we're going to mesh that together as two agencies.
And
all that.
If I were to lend you guys any advice, now this is coming from way down the rank structure, but this is, and the only thing I'm going to say is, because I know the kind of the bureaucracy and the timeline of the way these things, I would like to see you guys roll it out first.
Yeah.
Not to be like the litmus test of it, but maybe because I'm excited about it. I want this to go. I want this to happen. There's being a 2-station department, if I may, it's much easier for you guys to be able to create a format, right? Because you only have so many rigs, and the zone isn't the two zones aren't a whole lot different from each other than maybe age and, commercial versus residential. For us, it's going to take a lot of time because we have a Hastings, and then we have a zone 19, and then we have a zone 14, which backs up to you guys, and then we have a zone 5, we have a beach, we have all these things, and it's just, we haven't even started asking enough questions yet. Mm-hmm. And, I would like to see I would like it if you guys were able to get this out the door and working, and for us to have that, kind of that win, for us to say yes, that it's working. Look.
Yeah, we have the blueprint in place, and we've been training with it, and it's not necessarily in policy.
Yeah.
But we do have from the last, I want to say it was the last time Nick Martin's folks came through town.
Yeah.
Our administration put together a playbook that would be updated from the one that I was talking about, and this one would be department wide. When we actually get it into policy and everything, it will be a department wide playbook. Whereas what I was given when I came on, that was just with our shifted. So if I went to a different shift, forget that whole thing. Well, don't even bother even bringing it up.
I'm sure almost every department out there has that.
You know what I mean? So, but what we're trying to do, and I think it's what we should be doing, is we're trying to get more uniform across the board.
Yeah.
And they are working behind the scenes to moving towards us having that PDA, department wide. But again, it's like everything else, this happens and that happens, and we're going to work on it, and then we'll circle back to it, and then there's a hurricane, and then there's this, and then we'll circle back to it. It's tough to get stuff done, and then there's the what ifs, and and then wait and sees and stuff like that. So it's close. I would say it's very close, and it's almost exactly what we were talking about the other day in class at the EOC. It's right there. So it's very close, and what we do need to do when we do roll it out is make sure that you guys are on board with it too, and you guys know what we're doing, and we know what y'all are doing, and so there's no misunderstandings there too, because I'm sure there's going to be some little differences just based on manpower and district and stuff.
Personality, you name it. This is going to be a big undertaking, for you guys, but for us, the way we've been operating, we have a policy for residential fires, for commercial fires. We have all these things, and we've been doing a version of this, but this is definitely a side road, if you will, off of our norm. And I'm used to that. I grew up in that.
Right.
And I grew up in the just get the job done.
Right.
If you see something not getting done, you just do it.
Yeah.
And then problem solved. And I don't have to necessarily, tell command that it happened until after it's already done. Hey, by the way, the search is already done.
Yeah.
Or by the way, I didn't, the utilities was done by whoever or whatnot. There is no, there's no, I show up and this is my skill set. And as long as, nothing before me needs to get done, this is what I'm doing.
Right.
And we haven't even begun the conversation of recognizing when, because we could have 3 engines show up first, right? Which one of them is going to do a search, right? It's probably going to be the second one there. Do they know that? Because the PDA, does that lay out me recognizing something's not getting done?
Right.
And does it give me the flexibility to change gears and call the audible, if you will, and say, all right, no one's searching, I'm just going to go ahead and search.
Yeah.
But I've taken an engine out of rotation. How does that affect the downstream?
Right.
Do I got to put a rescue crew manning the engine? So there's, this is where it's comforting for me to not be a policymaker. I'm not a policy guy.
Yeah, there's so many pitfalls to it, and it's
no thanks.
You want to have a plan, but it's easy to get so rigid that you talk yourself out of the plan.
I never thought I would ever say that I'd rather be in the trenches, but I'd rather be in the trenches. When it comes to writing policy, absolutely. Stick me down there in the dirt.
Right.
Yeah, I'm not a policy writer.
Yeah.
I'm the get the job done guy, and yeah, give me something consistent, right? The PDA consistency, it goes right along with what we're talking about.
It's reassuring to know that both administrations, though, are trying to work towards that consistency, towards that uniformity. Like, they're supporting that.
Yeah.
It's not like we're just running around trying to figure it out on our own. Like,
yeah,
we're going to get there. We're going to get there. There's no doubt in my mind.
I think we're both pretty blessed in the type of administration that we work for. That it we have like minds.
Right.
And it's we don't work for politicians.
Yeah.
We work for people who we worked side by side with, because
Sure.
both of us have done that with our current fire chiefs.
Right.
I know that they were a fireman because we've been on thousands of calls together.
Right.
So, yeah. I know we've been at this for a while, but I want to ask you something personal. What do your goals look like? Tell me about like where you want to end up. And this is just me being just out of curiosity, because I have a vision of what I think that you're capable of. I'm just curious if that, if I'm even close to what your personal goals are for you.
So for me personally, right now, I'm just trying to be the best damn captain there ever was. Right? I mean, that's 100% where I'm at right now. That's where I'm trying to perfect, and that's where my attention is, and where that kind of takes me from there. We'll just have to wait and see. I would love to be a chief officer of some kind one day, whatever that looks like.
Mm-hmm.
Whether we eventually have battalion chiefs, district chiefs, or whatever they're going to be called. That would definitely take our agency to the next level, and we would be able to more effectively run things the way we want them to run if we had that position. So that's very appealing to me. But right now, I'm focused in on what I'm doing, and
that would take your shift supervisor off the rig.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
That'd be good.
It's such a gray area for us. It really,
Mm.
it works, obviously.
Well, yeah. Because we get the job done.
The place hasn't burned to the ground, but it could be better.
Yep.
And to get our shift supervisor off of a suppression rig and put them in a mobile unit to where they could get there and start this command board rolling and put eyes on things that they can get to quicker and be that support role, even just on day-to-day type stuff, running around doing things. Free them up for some of those administrative duties that they get tasked with. It would take us to the next level for sure. And I know that there's work behind the scenes on that as well, but until that happens, we're captains in our agency. We're going to constantly be in that gray area, where you're still on a suppression rig, but you're ultimately responsible for events within the first due. So it just is what it is. Comes with the job.
I've been on a couple of scenes with you with you having to run command from the outside. Mm-hmm. That's got to be a little taxing on the ego, if you will.
Sure.
And
sure.
The drive, because I want to take my firefighter through the front door.
Right.
Him holding the nozzle, me just point him in the right direction and say, go, 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 go.
Right.
But to have to, and that, I'll be willing to own the fact that honestly is part of my apprehensions about, becoming a captain, because that role is expected a lot more out of you, being, a first line. I'm the first line supervisor, but they're, our captain's right as the battalion chief.
Right.
And I don't know if I'm ready for that. I've been to a couple of fires with this crew, and it's fantastic,
Right.
And I'm dare not say I'm comfortable in my position, but I like the fact that, right, like if Eric and I have went through a couple of doors, and it's just like, I'll just take the hook and pockets. All right, spray up there, you know. And I'm pulling ceiling and he's spraying, and that's I love it.
Beautiful
I
thing.
love it. I don't want to let go of that. Stand in the yard. Are you kidding me? No way.
That's a beautiful thing.
No way.
And that's, I can still do that on, auto aid fires and stuff, but ultimately, anything within the city is going to be...
Not to rub it in there. I know it gives it, but that's the direction that you're going.
But I have two, with that being said, though, I have two very highly trained and competent lieutenants to where if they get there first or the situation, however it stacks up, if they're in command, like, I'm not going to assume command because, right? Like, if they're doing it, they got it.
I'll be inside.
Yeah. Like, I have that option, so that's nice. That's nice too. But
sorry, guys.
Hey, buddy.
Hey, Jared.
I thought you guys were in here. My fault.
I'm sorry.
Didn't interrupt.
You're on video now, or on audio now. I'm not ready for that.
Yeah.
I'm not ready for that at all. It could be, but I need to be, and I asked you about your goals, and being willing to throw mine out there. Mine have had to change some over the last few years, mostly because I was able to take an engineer's test. The first one I took, I want to say it was 3 years-ish on, but I didn't really want it.
Mm-hmm.
I passed the written part of it, but we had a practical part, and that engineer's test was almost like an ambulance supervisor test. And I definitely didn't want that, but it was the first promotional opportunity that I had, and so I bombed the practical part. It turned out that kept happening through all of my exams, but I didn't get promoted, and it was one of the best things that ever happened to me because I was able to stay at West King and was able to ride out of position as as an officer, I'm a 4-year fireman riding in a lieutenant seat on the busiest rig in the county, shift after shift after shift, and had I promoted to engineer and get crammed on an ambulance, my life experience probably would have been much different. So I was kind of blessed when it came to that. But
I can relate to that. I interviewed for lieutenant 3 times before I made lieutenant. So it wasn't like instant, it wasn't the first time, it wasn't the second time, it was the third time. Mm-hmm. But similar to you, like the first time I was a firefighter and, I was going through the process, but in the back of my mind knew that I probably wasn't going to be selected, and I was okay with that. Second time I was an engineer, and then within a year later another position came open, and then I got that third time. But like you just said, you never know where life's going to take you, and what trajectory that turn is going to set you in, and obviously I'm here today and things worked out, so I'm thankful.
I'm with you.
Now.
I definitely am thankful for the way things have turned out, but I missed that opportunity, or I let it go by. I didn't miss it. I let it go by, and then I made the cut, the engineers list. I'm a middle of the lister. Same thing. Studied for 6 months for the engineers test. Something I felt like I was a position I was really good at by then, and just I just suck at studying and test taking. And made engineer, made lieutenant. But after making lieutenant, I really started to look at the end of my career. Like I had a short-sighted goal, or short-term goal, if you will, to be off of a rig by the time I was 50. I wanted to be, if I were to test well enough and make promotional lists, and do well enough, my goal would to be most likely either indoors in the office But what I would want to be would to be in a battalion car by the time I turned 50. And some of my thinking was that it's physically, that's sounds about right. I'm 47 now and I'm still a lieutenant, so it's not going to happen. And I'm all right with that. And I didn't know when I made the goal how much fun being a lieutenant was going to be.
Yeah.
But this last captain's test came and went. I was eligible for it. It was just like, I'm having too much fun. So I blew my goal out of the water with this last captain's test. But I also know how bad I do in promotional exams, and our captain's tests are pretty rigorous. And I'll take nothing away from anyone who takes the county's captain's test and does well. Like they kind of put you through the ringer.
Yeah, that's what I understand.
And it's our policies and it's the county's policies, and then there's their kind of interview but / oral, whatever you call it.
Right.
It's pretty rigorous, and we've had some people do very, very well, and I would not have been one of them.
Yeah.
So I haven't been able to put my next layer on this goal. I want to get off of a rig when Uncle Sean's body tells him that I'm a liability. I might need some help when it comes to that, like my crew to say, listen, you're moving a little slow there, Dad. You might want to think about it. But who has it to say that to him? I don't even know if I could say that to anybody right now. Like,
well, I'm selfishly happy that you are where you are. We love having you on the rig, man.
Well, I appreciate it. It's a day to day. It's a day to day. This is I can tell you how I discovered this business, and it was completely on accident. I don't come from a family in the fire service. I couldn't have told you what the firemen did all the way up until I was like 23, 24-ish. I knew what a fire truck was, but I couldn't have told you what a firehouse looked like. I couldn't have told you what a shift looked like. I knew nothing about it, and I was painting a car, and the guy whose facility I was using was just an old dude, and retired. His wife was the executive secretary for a fire department in South Florida. And all this guy, he just chirped my ear off, chirp, just talking about like the stories that his wife would tell him about the firemen. And I was always half listening, but it was always about watching football, watching baseball, and barbecuing.
Right.
I never heard anything about calls. Never said a word about calls. It was just how much fun they were having all the time. He's like, you should be a fireman. And I was like, well, it does sound kind of nice. Let me look into it. And then that's what it took. It just took some guy telling me I could have barbecues, and it wasn't about. And I mean it. And I'm just being honest. It wasn't like, hey, I can be a hero and help people. It was like this. I didn't have a direction.
Yeah.
And it was I was just kind of verbally pointing in this direction, and it just kind of hit. Right. And I went to EMT school in the end of that year, and almost a bunch of time went by before I was able to go to fire school. So I almost lost my I actually had to renew my EMT certificate once or twice before going to fire school. And then fast forward, I didn't get hired till 2010. I went to EMT school in like 2003.
Right.
So I almost lost my fire certification before getting hired. Because my story is kind of similar to yours, to where I was on my last limb. Like that was my fire certificate was expiring the year I got hired.
Right.
And I would have had to go to Ocala and recert and all this, and I don't want to do that.
Yeah.
But lo and behold, I got turned down from the county from the beginning. Like I got a turn down letter, and it was like, you want to talk about getting crushed.
Yeah.
Like when they turned me down, I was unemployed.
Yeah.
And I was able to talk my way into a job, so to speak, through Chief Shank. And had I not stuck my neck out and went up and turned myself into a person rather than a statistic on the interview board. But yeah, I didn't know what a fireman did. Are you kidding me? Like I knew about cars. It's still my kind of like my passion. But
right.
like I kind of ended up here on accident.
Yeah. Yeah.
And now I can't. There's a large part of me that just can't get enough of this.
Right.
Half of it's the boys, and half of it is the glory, I guess.
Sure.
To be selfish.
Yeah. 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 Well, it's funny you say that. I mean, a lot of people don't know this, that I actually applied for the county before I applied for the city.
And they turned you down.
And they turned me down. And that's when.
Look at that.
That's when.
See, you guys missed out.
Candace was like, "Hey, why don't you try the city?" I was like, "Oh yeah, I guess I'll try the city." And here I am.
Yeah.
Three applications later with the city.
Knowing what I know of you, I'd be working for you right now. I'd be working, and I'd have been happy with that. Yeah. I'd have been happy with that.
I might be painting cars though too.
Well, it's that's not a bad business either. Sure. I hate. What keeps me out of that is one, they pay us pretty well to do this, and I'm humbled by what they pay me to show up every day and to enjoy this livelihood with no education. This is an uneducated hump here. Mm-hmm. I attempted college, and it was a complete and total bust. Mm. So
where at?
I finished high school in Fort Pierce, and the setting plays into it. I was living in Daytona Beach, mm-hmm. right? Mm-hmm. And so I attempted to go to community college and recognized right away that I really didn't have a direction to point myself in college. I was just going because, the people that I knew that were successful all went to college,
right.
But I didn't know anything other than that. So I was there, and I was like, this is stupid.
Hanging out.
I could be doing anything else and making money and not have to waste my time here. And so I was like, to hell with it. So I wish I would have stayed. It would be, I'd be getting paid for it right now because the department pays us to have degrees. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And of course it offers more than that, but I'm too old for that mess now.
Yeah.
I can't sit in a classroom. I mean, it's hard enough for me to sit and study for promotional tests. You want me to take English 2? Mm-hmm. No way. Although that would be a good goal that I really shouldn't say that because there is a part of me that wants to further my education in this, and I know to be a chief officer, I will use that a lot more than being one of the humps on the rig in the trenches. Right. And it's just, to be honest, it's the comfort zone that I'm in says, nah, you don't need that.
Yeah.
Just go out there and pull the hose. What are you doing?
Yeah.
But same, man, they scored. The county missed out on you. The cities, they have a real gem, if you will, in you being one of the leaders out that they have, leading their people, setting the example. And it rubs off on the people it rubs off on the county, employees, the county firemen that are around you, because you just grant me this, there's a poise that you bring and there's a calm that you bring, and our people need that from us more than they need the actual direction at the scene. They need the calm that's brought in, because I see it all the time, and it took a while for me to really notice that. But if you look at a scene where the officer's losing their mind, it's a domino effect. Everyone behind you will no longer be focused on what needs to be done. They're going to be more bothered by the officer's tone, demeanor, we set the stage for it, and they will operate so much better when we have poise, when we bring calm to a situation, even if it's silence. Sometimes, when that thing inside of me wants to like scream out, sometimes it's just shutting it and not letting them hear that I'm excited, and taking a couple breaths and being like, okay. And the people that we're serving, will more than likely calm the F down when you approach the situation that they think is tragic, where it's like, it's anxiety. To the grown man who's having an anxiety attack, who's never had one before, he's about to go meet Jesus in his mind. Mm-hmm. And I could screw this up for him and for my crew by either being wise or allowing myself to be sucked into that world. If sometimes just kind of just standing back and measuring it, mm-hmm. and not allowing yourself to be wrapped up in it, and not allowing yourself to, and measuring your tone, measuring your words, because they live by them. Our people live by them. They live by our words. They live by our tone. And I go back to the first lieutenant that I worked for, Mike Hires. He was a presence everywhere he went, mm-hmm. and he didn't get riled up. Like, if we could be, I remember situations where we had a situation where a girl was trying to flee in her car. She's and I can't recall what it was, but she was altered. Right? Put her car in reverse and backed across the street and almost hit two of us. Right? And ended up getting her car stuck on a tree stump across the street. And so the back wheels are off the ground, mm-hmm. or the front wheels are off the ground, and it's just, she's got her foot on the gas and she's screaming out the window, and the window's down. And Mike just kind of casually walks over there and he reaches through the window. As she's screaming at him, he just he looks at me and his eyes roll a little bit, and he opens the door up. And he was huge, so he takes his left hand and he grabs the door frame of the door, the window frame of the door, and he bends the door all the way to where it touches the front wheel. And it was effortless for him because he's a giant. Mm-hmm. And he just gingerly reaches in and he turns the key off and he pulls the keys out, and that calmed the entire situation down. Now, granted, all of us were standing back like with our mouths open, like, holy crap, right. Like, he's as strong as a house. Yeah. But had he ran over there and lost his mind, all of us would have been doing the same thing, just mm-hmm. like dominoes. And all of us looked at that situation totally different, because the guy that was leading us dove right into that situation, didn't lose his mind, and measured what it was, knew exactly what he had to do. I can't make the door touch the front wheel without probably cutting the hinges. Mm-hmm. But I could exude the same, type of poise in that situation. And by me doing it, as I learned it from him, my firefighters and my engineers will do the same thing. Yeah. And where will we be in 10 years if we just start measuring our actions and our words?
Right. Yeah, you set the tone. And
you do.
It's incumbent on us every day that we're making sure the next wave is going to do the same thing. Like, we actively be working on that, because it's going to happen.
Yeah.
We're only here for a little while, and I try to engage with the retirees as much as I can, just because there's so much institutional knowledge and so much experience that walks out the door, and a lot of the times you just never see them again. And that sucks.
Yeah.
Because it's a well of knowledge just waiting, right?
Yeah.
And so if we're not taking a little bit of time every day as company officers and senior firefighters and drivers, top to bottom, anybody who's a formal or an informal leader, if you're not taking a little bit of time every shift to try to teach that next person what you do, like, I think you're kidding yourself, and you're not setting up your agency for success. And that succession plan over a period of 10, 15, 20 years, I mean, that's the foundation of the fire service. That's what we're founded on, that pass down, that tradition, and not being so stubborn to where we can't do things differently and learn to be better and smarter and safer and all that other good stuff. Mm-hmm. But making sure that those little things, those intangibles, are being passed down, to the next person, and not only are we passing them down, but making them believers in understanding how important that those intangibles are, and that they are now the gatekeepers.
Yeah,
and that they have to do this.
Yeah,
it's not like hey, I'm doing this for you, and then don't worry about it. Like, I'm doing this for you, and I expect you to do this for them.
Right.
It's a domino, like you said.
Yeah. You make it okay for this to be the way. Like, this is the way that we operate. We don't. And I'm not going to say you, because we hire. We're hiring 100 people a year right now.
Yeah.
Right. How quickly can we ingrain these values in them?
Right.
And we need to, honestly, especially the county, we need to think about that. Like, with as many new officers as we're creating every day, and as many new firefighters as we're bringing on, I know how busy I am. I don't have the time to have a big brother conversation with every single one of them all the time. So it might be just like the example I gave from Lieutenant Hires. A call like that might be all that it takes, and most likely that will be your legacy. What is the legacy you're leaving behind is the question. And I used to tell the when I was still at 14, firefighters who were riding up as engineers, one of the questions always comes up, or one of the frame of minds coming up is, am I ready for this, or am I doing enough work? And a lot of us just have that conversation internally, I would hope. And I always framed it to them in this way: if you were on a rig that was going to your house, would you want you to be in the position that you're in? Mm-hmm. And if the answer is no, then you got some work to do. If you can, especially if there's a person in your department that you can point to, say, if there was something happen in my house, I want that guy pumping the truck. You have two things. One, you have perspective that you need to go to work. Two, you have a model you have a path, because they got there. Mm-hmm. How the heck did that guy get there? What is he doing that you're not doing? Mm-hmm. Right? And that's how I don't know if anyone remember me having a conversation with them that went along these lines. Was back in the day when we didn't have an engineer position, we just had 2 firefighters and an officer. Mm-hmm. And it was like Rochambeau for who's going to drive. And it was literally that sometimes. Right. And funny nugget on that was the matrix for us was Dale Ross was the lieutenant, and me and Jason Levita. If the 3 of us were on a rig, we were going to a fire. Mm-hmm. It was that's the way that it was. But Jason and I would would Rochambeau for who's driving. But I remembered from way back in the day when Uncle Bobby started measuring who he put on the rigs. Mm-hmm. And I had asked him kind of, out loud, like, how do you pick who goes on what rig? And he handled that question as an officer really well. He says, and my question was pointed more about like who he puts to drive the ambulance versus who he puts to drive the engine, which is kind of a bold question to be asking a chief's officer, but I asked mine nonetheless. And he says, I can put people on the ambulance and you can forget everything that there is to know about this job, and all you got to do is just drive them to the hospital, because somebody there will fix the problem that you have. He says, now when I put you on the fire truck, you're it. That's it. You might be the person who has to solve whatever it is that shows up. He says, so I have to be able to trust whoever is in that seat to be able to get it done with little to no supervision. Or I have to be able to trust, and I think he had formed it exactly that way. I need to be able to trust that you're the type of person who's going to make a good decision in the absence of someone over top of you. And I never let go of that. It was like, that solidified my philosophy in what it takes to be a good engineer on a rig. And I can appreciate that frame of mind, and it made me feel good because this is the time when I'm pumping the truck every day. And now I didn't tell anyone else that he and I had this conversation, because I'm not using that against my other people, but I wanted to give him no other choice than to pick me. Yeah. And I would tell people that. It says, if you take your crew and you take the people that you're kind of competing with pseudo or in reality, if you line them all up, if you can't tell who's the most qualified, then you're not doing what you're supposed to. I said, never talk, and I would tell them that you can never say anything bad about anyone else, because that will never work out in your favor. It will always bite you in the ass. I said, but what you can do is give that decision maker no other choice than to pick you. Be the best at it. And you don't have to broadcast it. They'll see it. They will see it. If you're terrible at it, they'll see that. If you're good at it, they'll see that. No one has has blinders on what's going on around them. They know who they can trust. For the most part, they know who they can trust. Be that person.
Yeah, and part of that is just knowing your role too. Some people are better at certain things than other people, and that's just the way it is. Now, we have a minimum standard. We have to be able to be adaptable. You might be on the engine today, you might be on the ladder tomorrow, you might be on a rescue, or whatever the case may be. So you got to be able to perform. But at the end of the day, there are people that are just better on the engine. There's some people that are better on the ladder. There's some people that are really good in hazmat. Some people are really good in ropes and tech level rescue, and that's okay. We don't all have to be the same. It's okay to have people who are stronger in certain areas. If anything, that's a great thing. That's a great thing to have, because you never know what kind of call you're going to get. And as an officer, you don't know everything. So it's great to have a hazmat person. It's great to have a extrication person, somebody that you can turn to. Should you know how to handle this situation as a company officer? 100%. That's why you have training, education, policy, all that other good stuff. But in reality, if I can turn to this person who I trust and who we have that relationship with, and I can say, hey, what do you think about this? Because this is their area of expertise. That's a beautiful thing. You know what I mean? That's not a bad thing. And sometimes we get so wrapped up in, but we got to be fair, we got to be equitable, and we got to be, yes, there is a minimum standard that we need to be, equals, but it's okay that some people exceed, expectations in certain areas, and that's a great thing.
Yeah, absolutely. I just try to be, I don't want to say try to be me, but you have to be able to point your people in a direction.
Sure.
And let them know that it's okay to when you recognize that you kind of suck at something, and I need to hear that once in a while, to go down the road with you, there might be a guy who wants to be on the engine or wants to be on the ladder truck, and how do you steer that guy to what he is better at? And I'll even use myself as an example. I'm ate up with engine work right now, and I won't say that I'm good at it. I have a good understanding of it. I would love to spend the rest of my career on a ladder truck. I just would.
Mm-hmm.
I love the rig. I love the ropes. I love everything that has to do with it. I could spend the rest of my career on it, but I'm better suited right where I'm sitting, and it's a tough pill to swallow.
Mm-hmm.
But it was kind of pointed out to me, not necessarily in those words, but it was one of our chief officers was like, what are you doing?
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's not the truck for you.
Right.
And I needed to hear that. And, I've been trying to steer my people in at least toward having a goal. And, what do you want? Just ask yourself that question. What do you want? And if you can't answer it, you need to. And then point yourself in that direction, because you got to pick a lane. I didn't pick a lane for years, which probably landed me in the lane of just engine work. And it bit me. It did. The county every station almost specializes in this and specializes in that. And fuck, I was just a fireman and stuck at West King. That's all I was doing. It was just, going to fires, but discipline-wise, I didn't have a squat. And I'm more apt now to tell my people, pick a lane, pick an avenue. Don't be general. Don't just be, don't just show up to show up, because for right or for wrong, the county has this habit of when you're silent, you're happy. Which is most of the time is not the case.
Yeah, not for firefighters.
No.
Silent firefighter is not a happy firefighter.
No. So I try to teach them, tell them to have goals, pick a lane, study a field, expose yourself to all this stuff, and
Well, that's like, I'm usually on the engine, and I've been on an engine for 90% of my career. Whenever we go to conferences, I always try, I think I've been to Orlando like 7 or 8 times, and whether it's the hazmat thing or Orlando Fire Conference or wherever we go, I always try to pick something that I don't normally do as my track for a hot track. Like,
okay,
I hardly ever take an engine class unless that's the only thing that's left.
Right.
Because I do it all the time. I'm not saying there's not value in perfecting your craft and learning new ways, but I can probably gather that at the end of the day at the bar with my buddy who took the engine class, right?
Right.
I want to learn things that are not in my comfort zone. So I'm going to go take a truck class. I'm going to take a search class. I'm going to take a forcible entry class. I'm going to take some kind of specialized hazmat class or an elevator class or something. I'm going to take advantage of that track to do something that I'm otherwise never going to do, or I'm never going to get that information because that call's coming. Right. I'm going to be on the ladder that day, or I'm going to get that call or that hazmat call or that ladder or the elevator call. And if all I ever do is pull hose, what am I going to do when that call doesn't require hose? You know what I mean? Like, so I always...
Today's the day, guess what? You're venting today.
I try to pick that class that seems so far away from what I would probably ever do, and just to try to take advantage of that. And I understand the argument of, well, yeah, but I'm never going to do that. Well, that's fine. Like, I get that too. But, man, like, for me, it's worked out. It's worked out, paid dividends for me, because I've had those calls that if I wouldn't have taken that class or gone to that conference or had that conversation, that I would have never known that, how to handle that or mitigate that particular situation. Get outside of your comfort zone. Like, that's one of the best things you can do. Get outside of your comfort zone. You're going to fumble a little bit. You're not going to be a rock star right out of the gate. And that's a beautiful thing. Yeah. You know what I mean?
There is magic in sucking at things.
Absolutely.
There is. It's like that's where the growth is.
Every day.
Yeah. And that's honestly almost a misunderstood fact about learning a new skill is in the beginning when you're new and you suck, the learning is super fast and super high intensity because you don't know it.
Right.
But once you get into the minutia, now that's to me when it really starts to suck. Like it's like, unless you really get off on the learning the why of how calcium reacts to helium or whatever the hazmat guys, the all that scientific crap, like the beginning is always the tremendous time.
Yeah.
And you know, to also go down the road with what you said, you know, today could be the day.
Yeah.
You're not you can't expect what you don't know what's coming, but like I didn't know the BP fire was coming that day.
Right.
But had I taken a hazmat class, even just casually before, I'd have probably had a better understanding of the positions that I had put myself in throughout that entire day.
Yeah.
You know, putting myself in bad situations and not even knowing it.
Sure.
So you don't know where some of these tools are going to help you downstream.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. There's no growth and comfort. You know, it's nice to give yourself that break, if you will. Like, you know, you can't constantly be just hammering yourself all the time. Like, you need to be
Yeah.
you know, comfortable in your capabilities.
Yeah.
But to just be comfortable in general, there's no growth in that.
Hell no.
You know
Hell
what I
no.
mean? Like, but yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, it's great stuff, man.
This is a good talk.
Dude.
This was a good talk. These things always, you never know how they're going to evolve. You know, my notes always kind of, that I start out good and then it's right out the window, and I always have to take notes, so I get a little distracted. But yeah, man, I took some good stuff away from this. Act your wage. Do not be surprised if that comes out of my mouth, and I will do my best to give, you know, credit to you from hearing it from you, because that, yeah, I'm gonna wear that one.
Chief Lasky.
I'm gonna wear that one. I'll put Chief Lask, and I'll write Lask, because I visit, you know, Pride and Ownership pretty frequently. You know, I have an Audible account, and I exercise the crap out of that thing. And that one, you know, on the way to work, and if you're listening to this, you know, and then, you know, especially if you have a long commute on the way in, get that. Either find some of his stuff on YouTube, or if you have an Audible account, get Pride and Ownership in it. And just, the good thing about that is that the entire book is made of small nuggets. It's like from cover to cover, small nuggets about just firemanship and leadership. There's so much growth in that, and it's from a super humble guy with more experience than 15 people that you could find and put together. The guy's fantastic, and there's a lot of books out there. So let me ask you this before we come to an end. Is there any books, we talked about Pride and Ownership, that you would recommend new officers or people thinking about officers reading?
Extreme Ownership's a must. I think that's a solid one. You know, that I would say that book, you know, definitely set me on a trajectory for leadership, and set the tone for me and how I prioritize people and decision making and ownership. So that would be the first one that comes to mind. Honestly, the Book of Joe is a great one. If you're a baseball fan, you know who Joe Madden is. But even if you don't know who Joe Madden is, it's a great one for not only his background, but just leadership in general.
Right.
Him and Tom Verducci, they partnered in writing that, and it kind of takes you through, you know, Joe Madden's life and of course his background and his success and his rise in baseball, and of course winning the World Series with the Chicago Cubs and breaking the curse and turning the, you know, Tampa Bay Devil Rays at the time from worst to first, and you know, some of the things he went through when he ended up out in LA. But you know, so many of his little leadership nuggets that he drops in that book is really, he's kind of the mentor that I never met for leadership, I would say. You know, just those little things, you know, do simple better is one of the things that he reiterates.
Do simple better.
Do simple better.
I'm going to write that one down.
Try not to suck. I mean, this book is filled with these little things that...
Try not to suck.
Try not to suck.
You know, my crew would tell you that they know I would love that one, because that's one of my isms that I've been throwing out there for years. Like, you know, dinner, after dinner... I'd say to whoever cooked, all right, thanks, that didn't suck.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's the not sucking has been part of my thing, even though,
Highly recommend. He's got a very, I think that obviously I've never met him and I'm not in that social circle, but from everything I've gathered, I've followed his career because I'm a Rays fan. I followed him from the day that he took that spot down there, and all the documentaries and books and stuff like that. One of the things that I love about him is he recognizes that Moneyball approach to statistics and all that kind of stuff, where all that comes into play, and how that may influence your decisions and make set up a team a certain way and thought process and that kind of thing. But at the end of the day, it's humans playing the game. It's humans that are making decisions, and you have to make decisions based on intuition and experience driven decision making prime,
Right.
And that the key to success is really in taking information, being open-minded to other things, taking in that data as it relates to us, all the studies that come out, through all the fire behavior studies and hose and nozzle studies and all this information. There's so much data flooding into our line of work, taking all of that, but then putting it towards your experiences. He says one thing in the book over and over again. He says, something that he asks his people, but also himself, tell me what you think, not what you've heard. Tell me what you've seen. Tell me what you've experienced. Tell me how you see the game. Tell me how you see this scenario or how it would relate to us. Tell me what you think, not what you've heard. Because what you've heard is just the same crap over and over and over and over again. And if you can apply that personal experience and that recognition prime experience, if you can apply that to all the other data and make a decision based on what you know, but also all that other information, there's a lot of keys to success in that. And it resonates throughout a clubhouse or throughout a firehouse, as it were. And you're gathering you're taking from everybody's experiences, you're taking everybody's opinion. You're not fully, it's not that you don't appreciate all the other data and stuff like that, but data doesn't make decisions. Human beings make decisions. And that human being, that leader, has to still make the decision in that moment, and they have to make that decision based on their gut. And that's okay, right? So you can have all that data and all that information, but at the end of the day, don't lose sight of that human element. And he puts a lot of emphasis on that in the book, and that's how he managed. And there's just a ton of things. I could go on for like an hour just on things that I pull out of that book. But I would say if you're new to managing people, leading people, supervising people, that would be obviously in my top two for sure. The Book of Joe. Whether you like baseball or not,
I'll read it.
There's enough to.
I'm sure it's on Audible. I'll find it and go through it and give you some feedback on it.
Yeah, it's a great one.
Extreme Ownership.
Extreme Ownership.
Great book. I would not do that book justice by trying to sell someone to read it. If you want to take charge if you want to effectively lead a group of hungry whatevers, if they're hungry and they want, they want success, they want wins, that is a must read as far as giving you a situation, an actual situation. And from that book was written, that's a Jocko book, and it's written from a combat situation. So it'll give you a scenario and then how it plays in the real world. I mean, it's hard to find books that are written that way.
Yeah.
I love that book. The one that I would recommend people, it's not necessarily even a leadership book, but it's called Why We Sleep. And it's written by a neuroscientist by the name of Matthew Walker, and you will learn more about why we sleep, how we sleep, what affects it. It is tremendous. He explains what delirium tremens is. From that the alcoholics suffer when they come off alcohol, is literally caused, from a scientific point of view, from the lack of sleep. And it's what your body's going through is what actually puts you into that. And he lays it all out, and the effects of dopamine and the effects of adenosine and all these nucleotides and all these stuffs that are things that are in your body that are happening. And he lays it out for you in a way where you can analyze what your day-to-day is, the effects of caffeine. And by God, firefighters are riddled with it. Like me, I'm sitting here, I got a monster in front of me. Yeah. So it changed the way I look at sleep. It literally, the book didn't. He did a podcast with Joe Rogan. And his podcast is what led me to him, and his podcast is what changed my life. It made me think, and it has altered my direction as far as how I look at sleep at the station, and how much pressure I put on, our leadership to nurture that part of our job, and to give you guys credit. Like when I was at the main station, Chief had talked about. Your main station chief had talked about like a time set aside during the day for rest. Like it shouldn't be, but it was almost unheard of. Like we used to have one of our executive staff who would come down, and like if you were asleep, like what's the matter with you? You're the worst person in the world. Well, without knowing anything of what that guy had been through the day before or whatnot. So it was that was eye opening, and I had a appreciation for his willingness to just throw it out there. Yeah, that's what this is, and we don't mess with that.
That's compassion.
Yeah, there's one of the C's.
That's compassion.
Compassion, consistency, competency. Got it. Brandon, this was fantastic.
Yeah, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. I had a great time, and I've got nothing but respect for you and what you're doing here, man. This is great.
I'm just being a fireman.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for being one along with me. And this is going to sound like like a retirement speech, but it is not. Thanks for the memories and the influence. Is whether you're not the type to admit it, but whether you know it or not, how you have been in my interactions with you have painted part of who I am and part of where I want to go. So thanks.
Appreciate it.
We will do this again.
Absolutely. Anytime.
Yes, sir.